In a previous episode, I spoke about having initial success in changing my life, and I did. And then I got I ran out of money, and I had to sell something which was quite dear to me. And the thing was, it was not an inconsiderable amount of money, and it sold within 5 minutes. People can call these things coincidence. I've been playing around with this stuff long enough to know that it was a bit more than that. But anyway, and so I was feeling on a high, and there's this natural tendency when you have this initial success to want to double down on it and to sort of jump ahead of yourself and start thinking, oh, what's the next? But I knew that was not the way to go. And I knew that I wasn't there. And so instead of speeding up, I held the speed I was at. In fact, I tried to even slow down because I knew something was coming, and sure enough, it did. So at the moment, I'm looking for work, and so in Australia, in order to get unemployment benefits, which kind of only just covers my rent, you're on this point system, and you've got to get so many points. Anyway, it's quite a bit, and so as I was going through it, and then I realised that there's you can only claim this certain part of this thing for each period, and I'd done all this stuff and realised that I wasn't going to earn the points for it. Anyway, it built up and built up, and it's a form of pressure that my nervous system doesn't deal well with, and I crashed, and I started to doubt myself again. And I ended up actually making a doctor's appointment because I've realised that for so long I've been just coping, but not wanting to use my different conditions as an excuse. So I finally realised that I need help, and I need some way to deal with the pressure. So rather than get down on myself, I just took the time it needed because my nervous system crashed. And rather than going into depression, I realised what it was, and so I just allowed it to do what it needed to do, to discharge. And I went back into what I call a neutral space, and I allowed I sat with the emotions, because these were very, very, very different emotions than what I'm used to, and I guess it was getting to the depths of these, this fear and this doubt and the sort of bleak outlook on life. And it was, like the idea that you're going to sort of work through something and then that's it, and it's never going to bother you again. I just don't think that's real. I think these things, especially if you're prone to certain things, which unfortunately, due to my past I am, and I don't ever want to go into that, but anyway, you just have to be careful. You have to and what I'm finding is that if you pick your rhythm, and it's normally a lot slower than what you think it is, that this stuff and I was lucky that I didn't allow myself to go really, really high, which is what I was, what I was originally felt like doing when I had this, when I got sort of this money in my account. Straight away my nervous system settled, and I was going to just, kick back and relax. I was like, no, that's not and I sort of got all excited about that, but I was like, no, you've got to keep that rhythm. And the thing with that rhythm is that it's living in the moment. And I know that sounds cliche, but you can't do anything but. if you try to go beyond the moment, you're generating energy that can't be discharged anywhere. Like if you've got all the dreams in the world, you can only do as much as you can do in each moment. You can't really go beyond the moment. And I think we have a tendency to do that, like constantly. And then piled on top of that is this, access to instant gratification and instant entertainment. And again, all these videos and stuff that we're watching, they're generating emotions and they're generating this excitement and this, these pictures in our head of what we're going to become when it's not real. We can't become that overnight. And so once that image is removed, we get dropped back into the reality of our situations. And the reality of our situations is we don't have those resources on hand. And we don't have that energy. And we don't have that that reality. And so the actual reality of our situation hits us. And we tend to drop from that high to where we actually are. And then we think that's kind of negative. Whereas if we just accept where we are, and I know that's not easy, but if you just remove all the actual thoughts around it and just sort of take in the moment and connect with your environment. And this is the other thing that I'm finding is that, and I kind of always knew this, but because I've been spending so much time trying to put this together and get this out there, I'd kind of forgotten. And that is, we can be kind of calm on the inside, but then we're not really connected to the outside. We're sort of walking around, but we're in our head. And a real quick way to do this is just to start looking at objects and allow your vision to rest, and you'll realize how often you're not really connected to your environment. And you'll also realize once you do how calming it is. And how actually it can be quite energizing to do so. This idea of connection. So I always come back to this idea that there's only really one type of problem, and that is a lack of awareness. And there's only really one desire, and that is a desire for connection. Whether that's a connection within ourselves or a connection with our world, or with a connection with our dreams or our desires. We want to be connected to those things. But in order to get there, we have to be connected with this moment. And so this is what I was working on until today when I crashed, was just staying connected to this moment and staying in that sort of going from that neutral state where your system stabilizes and your nervous system stabilizes, and you're starting to kind of feel good without being over the top, to this potential state where, and that's where you've got to meet the moment. If your potential is, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and this is going to happen for me, and I'm going to become, and then the moment that you're in is in your house having to cook dinner, there's a mismatch there, and that mismatch, if not handled, is eventually going to turn around and kick back at you because you're just bringing too much energy to the moment. And like I said, and I think that's why we try to distract ourselves, because, the gap between where we are and where we want to be is so huge. And, the excitement that we sort of attach to realizing our dreams and getting what we want out of life is so big that we're trying to carry that, and we're expecting that to be in every moment when it's not. And so what I'm finding more and more is that the rhythm that we actually have to bring to each moment is minute. And that if we pull that back, if we pull the amount of energy we're putting into each moment, it doesn't say you have to be dull. The thing of it is that when you do slow down and when you do connect with your own self. And when you do connect with your environment, there's a feedback mechanism going. It creates a loop. And this is, I've always say, people used to ask me, "Oh, what's this about?" And I said, "Well, it's a way to feel good no matter what and live a meaningful life that fits." And people said, "Well, that's a bit vague. You can't say that." And I said, "Well, I can, because when you connect at this energetic level, it feels good. It's a feedback loop. It's the same as if you generate ideas of yourself in the future being this, that, or the other. It's generating a feedback loop, but it's just not, you can't maintain it unless you stay in that energy, and then you will crash. You'll eventually crash. Or you'll just have to keep going from one distraction to the next. But if you took that energy and took away all the distractions and then had to deal with the moment, you'd be like, "Oh my God, get me out of this moment." And there's nothing, the thing is that when you're in the moment, when you are fully aware of yourself and not caught up in these, repeating patterns, repeating thought patterns and emotional patterns, there is this initial sense of relief, there is this sense of stabilizing, and then there's this sense of presence. And it's very subtle to begin with, but you can, with a bit of awareness and with a bit of tuning in, you can even tune into like your skin, because your skin's generating an electrical flow. It's generating a tiny, minute energy, as is your muscles, as is your heart. They're all generating energy. And I think this is where you can feel good, is to just create an awareness feedback loop with your own natural system. It's not going to be over the top. It's not going to be, yeah, and fist pumping, which is kind of what we look at, what we get fed on social media as what success looks like. What they don't show you is the moment to moment, the the huge amount of moments that lead up to that, and what keeps people going in those moments. And yeah, you can use willpower, but as I said, for me, I don't know, I can't say it for everyone, but for me, it's exhausting. Relying on willpower alone, it's exhausting, and I can't maintain it, and I really don't think it's maintainable just to use willpower. I think you end up going beyond what you actually need, and you're using an exceptional amount of energy when and it may very well work for a time, and it may very well work for some people, but for me, it doesn't work. It's not. I can't maintain it, and it's not efficient. It's not an efficient use of energy for me. So what I found was that by even just connecting now, so I'm sitting here getting dinner ready, and I'm actually pulling a chicken apart. If anyone was wondering, if you couldn't see, I'm making fajitas tonight. It's very easy to get caught up in these repetitive thought patterns. But if you're just here, kind of, becoming aware of your posture, because when you start to overthink, you tend to you get stuck in these. Your posture tends to bend, because stress is to bend, and oftentimes we're not thinking of really good things; we're thinking of stressful things, and it makes us bend and sort of crunch over. And so when you see straight away, as soon as I bring awareness to it, I shift my weight, and by shifting my weight, I'm moving. There's a flow of awareness, and there's a flow of energy within my body, and then my body starts to find its center on its own. It just does. It just naturally, your system wants to find alignment. It wants to come into alignment. It wants to find clarity. It wants to find rest. And it wants to work towards what I call the potential state. So your potential to be the potential to be you in the fullest expression of you. And that's not just a job. The fullest expression of you in every moment. And for me, what I had this realization that all these kind of this, and it was my ego, and because with the ego, because you're generating all these ideas of yourself and what you want, you need to build an identity to house all that, and that becomes your ego. And so you start having these thoughts and your response and your reactions in order to handle all that energy. And one day I realized, I was like, God, none of that's me. None of that's me. Like, I don't want to be like that, really. Like, I'm doing it because I think I have to in order to get where I want to go. But it's not me. Like, I'm much, the real version of me is a lot calmer than that. And it's a lot more peaceful. It wants to be peaceful. It doesn't really want to go out and be on social media all the time and trying to tell everyone that I've got the answer to this and that and the other. When I don't. I'm just sharing my experiences. It's a very the best way to think of it is, and this when you start to tune into your truest self. For me anyway, and I've sort of found this with talking with others as well. You start to get these memories of when you were younger, and these memories are moments when, if you look back and think about it, well, I was really felt like myself then. I was connected to my environment and I was happy in my environment for no real reason whatsoever. As kids, we're happy for no reason. We feel good just because we're connected to our bodies and our emotions, and we're connected. We're not racing ahead with our thoughts, and so we feel ourselves. And as soon as we start to bring in all these other expectations and other people's desires and trying to keep up with everyone else and do what everyone else is doing, and thinking that we're going to miss out if we don't, we start to bring in all these extra pictures into our mind, and these extra pictures bring all this energy, and then we've got all this energy and we're trying to fit it into these moments that don't need all that energy, and so it has to go somewhere, and it tends to turn into stress. And then, we find ourselves in jobs we don't like, and we find ourselves in relationships we don't really want to be in. And it just compounds. Whereas what I'm finding is that the answer isn't, and I keep saying this, that, it's not an answer we're looking for. Like I said, there's plenty of answers out there. There's thousands and hundreds of thousands of answers out there of people that, have a different way of doing things. So if it was just the answer we're looking for, and yourself, when you see something that goes, oh, that might be it, and then you watch it, and it makes sense, but then you're like, well, I don't feel any better. That hasn't really changed anything. So I think, and I keep saying, if it's not the answer, in order to get the right answer, you have to have the thing that comes before it, which is the right question. So what is the question? Well, the question could be as simple as, what can I do in this moment? If I can't go out and get a new job in this moment, what can I do? If I can't do anything at all, what can I do? Well, then I can work on myself. I can make sure that I'm calm and relaxed and feeling good, so that when the opportunity arises that I can do something, I'm not in a pit. And if you're following along these videos, you'll see every time that I do that and I create the conditions, the right conditions, something shifts every time. I get a phone call, I get an email, something shifts. It can be as little, and I'm starting to get, even just by doing this in the last week, I'm starting to get a different type of comment on my YouTube videos. People are starting to see what I'm doing, because there's this feedback loop happening. Because I'm connecting with my truest self, that allows the expression of my truest self to occur, and then people see that and respond to that. And they respond to my message, my actual message, not the message that I think I should be giving, but the truest expression of myself. And that creates a feedback loop that allows it to continue, which is literally the definition of success. Success means to continue. So I am connecting with my truest self, and I am allowing the expression of that truest self in the moment, even if it is just being here present as I pull the chicken apart, and not thinking about 50,000 other things, or not thinking negative thoughts, or not getting caught up in feedback loops that have no real need to be in my head. And I think, again, a lot of the problem comes down to speed and rhythm. We're just moving too fast at rhythms that aren't really conducive to our own health. If we just slow things down, and again, this is hard for a lot of people because we've never been taught how to do it. Like a lot of the exercises and techniques that I came up with were ways to simulate change, these change processes that we often don't think about. Like, oh, how do you slow down? Or you just, when you think, you're like, well, how do you slow down? Okay, and it can be, it's just rhythm. Boom, 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 boom. And then you find your own rhythm. You find your own rhythm in how you read things. You find your own rhythm in how you speak. You start to land on these words, and you allow the fullest expression of that word. And so that's enough. That can be enough. I know that sounds weird, but that can be enough. If there's nothing else you can do about your situation, other than what you can do in the moment, it makes sense just to work on the moment. And with a little bit of practice, that moment can turn out to be quite magical, as can the lead up to the next moment and the next. Yeah, you're going to stumble, 100%. I saw that today. It's like, it really didn't take much to trip me up, but that's, I'm susceptible to that kind of thing. But even then, I just apply the energetic principles. And that is, okay, come back to neutral, all right? Allow the system to settle. Okay, generate the right intention, which is creating like a field that I want to, that I can operate in. And that field is matching this moment, okay? So I call it, using feelings as fuel. So yes, you may be feeling a certain way. Most of the time we get that mixed up with emotions, because we're generating these emotions and they're not going anywhere. So they go back in on themselves. So we feel that energy. But there's a certain amount of tension. So I use that to kind of keep moving. But what I'm doing is I'm concentrating on, moving that energy in what I'm doing, but also recirculating that energy so it doesn't get ahead of itself. And I'm controlling the amplification of that energy, because whatever you put attention on amplifies. If you put attention on calm, that amplifies as well in a weird way. So, chicken's ready. I'm ready to keep going, and we'll see where we go from here. Let's do it.